Hi everyone, I'm Jenna. Welcome back to my channel, Learn Academic English, where I teach intermediate and advanced level lessons for people who want to be successful in school and work. Today's English lesson is going to focus on one big tip that I have for how to improve your vocabulary. And that is, when you learn vocabulary, learn the whole word. Today I'm going to talk about how to learn more about new words, including collocations, connotation, synonyms, antonyms, and word families. Before I get started, I'd like to remind you to please give this video a like and leave a comment if you find it helpful. So let's get started. First, let's talk about my first tip for learning the whole word. So when you have a new word that you want to learn, you should learn collocations. What are collocations? Collocations are words that go together. So basically, every word that you learn in English is going to have words that come immediately before it or usually immediately after it. So for example, if it's a verb, there might be a preposition that's always used with that verb. If it's an adjective, there might be words that are usually used together. So let's look at an example. For the verb discuss, what is a collocation with the verb discuss? Well, discuss is a little bit tricky because there's no preposition that's used with discuss. We don't say discuss about something. We just say discuss something. Now, that's one thing that you need to learn. The next thing you might want to learn is what kinds of nouns could you put here? So we could say discuss the issue, discuss the problem, discuss the topic. In the next one, we have the example word optimistic. Optimistic. What is optimistic? Optimistic it's an adjective that describes your view of life or your view of the world. For people who think about things in a positive way, we say that they are optimistic. So this is an adjective, and we always say optimistic about something. Okay, I'm optimistic about the future. I'm optimistic about climate change, for example. So again, it's describing having a positive, hopeful view. We often can use optimistic to describe a person. We can say he's an optimistic person or he is optimistic. So again, that's collocations. What words usually go together? In the next one, I'm going to talk about word family. So for word family, you want to know that there are four main parts of speech that you should focus on for the word family. That's noun, verb, adjective, and adverb. So you're looking for related word forms. That's why we call it a word family. So with the word discuss, the verb discuss, we would want to also learn the noun, discussion. There is no adjective or adverb form for this word. We do have the passive discussed that has already been discussed, but that's not really an adjective. That's more of just the passive verb form. Okay, for the word optimistic, we have the noun optimism. Optimism. Optimism is the noun for that positive, hopeful, optimistic view. So that's the noun form. And then we don't have a verb form for this meaning. There is a word optimize, but that meaning is actually different. So we're not going to put that here. And that's something that you have to be careful of. If you look up in the dictionary to find out the related forms, you want to make sure that they all are related to the same meaning. Then we have the adjective optimistic, and we have the adverb optimistically. She optimistically thinks about the future. Okay, so that's word family. The next one is connotation. And connotation, basically, we just want to know, does the word have a good or a bad meaning? Is the meaning positive or negative? Or sometimes it can be neither. Sometimes we say that it's neutral. For example, for the word discuss, we might say that that one has a positive connotation or maybe neutral. And the word optimistic is definitely a positive connotation. If we say that someone is optimistic, we mean that in a good way. And finally, synonyms and antonyms. So these you should be super careful with because it's really difficult to find good synonyms for the exact meaning that you're looking for. So I tell my students, don't just go to the dictionary and look for a list of synonyms. You want to be careful that those synonyms actually really do have a very similar or same meaning, and that these are words that we actually use. So what I advise my students in my class to do is when you're learning a word, try to match it with a very easy, clear synonym that you already know. For example, with the word discuss, can you think of a synonym or a word that has a similar meaning? Discuss. So sometimes I hear people say debate. But debate and discuss are really not the same. When I think about discuss, I think about a group of people sitting together, talking about a topic in depth, thinking about different views, talking about details, discussing. Debate is different. Debate means that people have different views and they are kind of going back and forth, talking about them. And often with debate, there's more kind of tension between the two sides. Whereas with discuss, it's a much more positive meaning that people are sitting together, sharing views, and trying to come up with a common solution, maybe. So for discuss, the easy, clear synonym that I would use would be talk about. So again, that's an easy, clear synonym. What about optimistic? Optimistic, we might say positive. So she's a positive person. She's an optimistic person. We might say hopeful. These are not exactly the same, but they are pretty good. And then you also want to think if there are antonyms. So we don't really have an antonym for discuss, but we do have the antonym for optimistic. The opposite of optimistic is pessimistic. And these words you really should learn together. If you learn optimistic, you should know that the opposite is pessimistic. A pessimistic person is a person who wakes up in the morning and has a negative view of things, or looks at a problem and thinks about it in a more negative way, is not hopeful. You can say that a lot of people are pessimistic about the future, or that a lot of people are pessimistic about climate change. They are not hopeful. Okay, next, I want to just quickly mention that when you learn a new word, you should also learn what we use the word to describe. Do we use the word to describe people, animals, objects? So let's break it down. For example, for the word discuss, we use discuss obviously for people. People can discuss things. We don't use discuss for animals. And what about the word optimistic? Optimistic we would use for people as well. I will show you some more examples in just a moment, but there are some words that will be very helpful for you to learn by thinking about it this way. There may be some words that we only use for objects, or we only use for people, but then you might even notice, do we use it for all people? Do we use this word for adults and children, or for both men and women? So you can break it down to kind of think about how we use this word for different groups of people or things. So let's practice learning the whole word for new vocabulary words with two examples. We're going to look at the words devastating and eradicate. These are words that I teach my students in the reading and writing course that I teach at a college here in California. First, the word devastating. Devastating means that it's something very terrible, something terrible in a shocking way. So devastating is an adjective, and we can say a devastating situation. A devastating blow. A blow would mean like something really bad that happens in your life. So we can use devastating with nouns after, like a devastating situation. And the word eradicate means to get rid of completely, to get rid of completely. But we often use eradicate to describe diseases, and this is a verb. So for example, we might say to eradicate a disease. Or we might use eradicate with a particular problem, like to eradicate corruption. Okay, next for the word family, devastating is an adjective. Can you think of the noun and the verb form? So here we have the noun. And if you have a good dictionary, you should be able to look up one of the forms and find the other related forms. This is especially good if you have a paperback, like a book dictionary. Devastation is the noun. The verb is devastate, and the adjective is devastating. And then the adverb is devastatingly. And we actually do use that one sometimes. Okay, and then eradicate, that is a verb. Do you know what the noun form is? So if you know with verbs that end in ate, we can make it a noun by adding shun. Eradication. And verb is eradicate. The adjective, we don't really have an adjective form of this word. Sometimes we use it in the passive form with ed. We could say that disease is eradicated, but that would be the passive form of the verb. Okay, connotation, good or bad? Well, for devastating, it's definitely a bad connotation. It's definitely negative. It describes something really terrible. Eradicate. Eradicate has a positive connotation because it describes a situation where you have a big problem, like a disease. It has been taken care of. The problem is gone. You have gotten rid or you have erased the problem. So that's a good thing. Next, for synonyms and antonyms. For devastating, we might say that the word terrible is an easy and clear synonym. You know, if I use the word devastating, I feel like devastating is more specific and stronger than terrible, but terrible is probably the closest word. And then eradicate. Eradicate, we would probably say that that is the same thing as to get rid of. But you have to be careful because these are not exact synonyms. We use eradicate to describe getting rid of, like I said, a big problem. So this could be a disease, to eradicate COVID, to eradicate smallpox. Or you can use eradicate for a kind of societal problem, a problem that exists in society. Eradicate illiteracy. Eradicate poverty. Eradicate corruption. Eradicate gun violence. Get rid of, you could use that in all of those sentences. But you can also use get rid of like, I have something dirty in my room and I'm going to get rid of it. Or to get rid of a person that you don't want to spend time with. Get rid of is a little more general that we can use to describe lots of things. Okay, let's go to the next part about who do we use this to describe, or who can we use these words with. So the first one is devastating. We cannot say she is devastating or he is devastating. We don't use it for animals either, but we can use it for objects or things, like the storm was devastating. The war has been devastating. We can also use devastating for someone. We can say Something is devastating for someone. The divorce has been devastating for the children. How about eradicate? Well, we can eradicate things, eradicate problems, like I mentioned before. We don't use eradicate for a person. We don't say to eradicate someone that you don't like. In general, we would not use eradicate to get rid of a person or an animal. As you can see, when I'm explaining these words, one of the best ways to learn new words is to hear them in sentences. So that is another thing that's really helpful to do. Go to your dictionary and make sure that you're using a dictionary for English learners and check the example sentences. So I know that it's helpful to practice this with more examples. So in the description box below, I'm going to leave a few more words for you to practice. Maybe these are new words for you, and you will learn some new words today. Even if they're not new words, you can learn the words in more detail by analyzing them with these few tips. I hope you found this video helpful to help you improve your vocabulary. If you liked it, please don't forget to give it a like, leave a comment, and subscribe if you have not done so already. I hope to see you back here next time. Make sure to let me know if you have questions, and take care, everyone.